Hi, I'm psychology professor Bruce Hinrichs. Did you ever wonder about right and wrong? Well, of course you did. And did you ever notice that people have different ways of thinking about whether something is right or wrong? We have a theory in psychology developed by Lawrence Kohlberg that tries to explain how moral thinking develops. I'm going to explain this theory to you here in this video. Lawrence Kohlberg was an American psychologist who asked people whether some behavior was right or wrong. He would give people a story, he would tell them a little vignette, a little story in which someone did something that might be considered wrong. And they would ask them why you think that was right or why you think that was wrong, what that person did. And he asked children of different ages and teens and adults these different vignettes, these different stories. And then he discovered that the reasons that they gave for something being right or wrong could be organized in a series of stages. So this is stage theory. It's very much like the theory of Jean Piaget. If you know, Jean Piaget was a very famous psychologist who developed a theory of cognitive development of children. And Kohlberg's theory is very, very much influenced by Piaget's theory. All right, here's a quick summary of the 6 stages of moral development according to Lawrence Kohlberg. And Kohlberg's theory is very much like Piaget's theory, except it's just focusing on thinking about right and wrong. But it has the same idea of stages that Piaget had, and this movement from young age to older and older and older as your way of thinking changes over time. So the very, very young child thinks of right and wrong as a way to avoid punishment. And then gradually they start to think of morality as being having a self-interest. Well, what do I get out of it? And then young children start to think about being good, being a good boy or a good girl, and eventually come to the idea of laws. And this is actually stage 4, the law and order stage, which is very common in adults. And then eventually come to the idea that, wait a minute, laws are just made up. Why do we obey laws? I guess it's because we're not because they're laws, but because we're agreeing to some sort of social contract. And then eventually, as people become very, very wise, they develop the idea of ethical principles. So I'm going to show you these stages in the next few slides. Kohlberg's 6 stages of moral development, based on number 1, how we think about, not what we do, not what we feel, but how we reason, how we use logic, how we use reasoning to try to decide if something is right or wrong. And secondly so first is cognitive. Secondly, it's about development. It's about changes, how people change over time in the way they think about things. So this is a theory of cognitive development about moral problems, questions of right and wrong. There are 6 stages in Kohlberg's theory. They are usually divided into 3 groups. The first 2 stages are called pre-conventional. This is sort of childish ways of thinking about right and wrong. And then stages 3 and 4 are called the conventional level. Conventional meaning this is typical, sort of normal ways that people think about right and wrong, even adults. And then stages 5 and 6 are more advanced. These are like more educated people or people with more experience, more wisdom, more mature. So these are called post-conventional stages. Kohlberg's stages of moral development don't really have another name. We just call them Kohlberg stages. And the names of the particular stages are not set in stone. They're not always the same. So when you read different books, magazine articles, journal articles, or take different courses in psychology, there might be slightly different names used for each of these stages. I usually just refer to them by number, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and so on. But here, this slide shows you some names that are sometimes used. Stage 1, punishment, obedience orientation. and so on, all the way up to stage 6, a universal ethical principle orientation. But those names can change a little bit from one person's explanation to another. I'm going to go through each of the stages for you next. What Lawrence Kohlberg did is he gave people scenarios, little hypothetical situations and asked them to determine what was the right thing to do, what was the wrong thing to do in these situations. So his most famous one that is used all the time to explain his theory is a situation in which a man's wife is dying, but there is a drug that will cure her, but he can't afford it. It's a very expensive drug, and he's very poor. He can't afford it. So he steals the drug in order to save his wife. And the question is, was it right or wrong for him to steal that drug? And more importantly, in Kohlberg's theory, why do you think so? So it really doesn't matter so much whether you say, yes, it was right for him to steal the drug, or no, it was wrong for him to steal the drug. The real issue here is, what kind of reasoning do you use? What is important in your reasoning? Like a child might say, "Oh, does he love his wife?" Like that becomes an important factor, whether he loves her or not. But if he doesn't love her, well, then no, it's wrong to steal the drug. But if he loves her, then yes, it's right to steal the drug. So that kind of thinking kind of focuses on, what do you get out of it? So what Kohlberg is interested in is, how do people think about, what reasons do they use to decide if something is right or wrong? And what Kohlberg discovered is the very youngest children, like toddlers, for example, what he calls stage 1, they tend to decide if something is right or wrong based on whether or not you are obeying a parent or an authority figure who's telling you to do something, and whether or not you've been punished. So if you've been punished, then that was the wrong thing to do. But if you're obeying, then that was the right thing to do. So the very first ideas about right and wrong are based on obedience, obeying, and avoiding being punished. Now, stage 2 in Kohlberg's theory is for children who are a little bit more developed, a little older, maybe 5, 6 years old, and they're starting to understand sort of the give and take of right and wrong, that maybe I could do something for you and you could do something for me. So we might call this a relativist orientation, a sort of give and take orientation. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back orientation, like a politician might say, um, I'll vote for your bill if you'll vote for my bill when it comes up next week. So making a deal. And this is considered right because you're getting something out of it. So in the Kolberg scenario, in which a man steals a drug to save his life of his wife, this person would say, yes, it's the right thing to do if he loves his wife. If he's getting something out of it, then it's the right thing to do. But if he doesn't love his wife, then it's wrong to steal the drug. So stage 2 focuses on, what do I get out of it? Can I get something out? If I get something out of it, then it's the right thing to do. Stage 3 morality is a little step above stage 2, in which a person is trying to conform to society, to family, to your culture in being good or being nice. So the idea here is, I want to do things that help people, that will be nice to people. I want to be a good person. I want to help somebody across the street. I want to open a door for somebody. So should the man steal a drug? Well, on the one hand, it's nice that he wants to help his wife. That's a very good thing. But on the other hand, it's very bad that he's taking somebody else's property without their permission. That's not a very nice thing to do. That's not a very good thing. So this kind of reasoning does not look at any kind of higher ethical principles. It looks at relationships with the culture, with the society, with the family, and trying to decide if something's right or wrong based on, am I being good? Am I being nice? Am I pleasing people? Are people pleased with what I do? Is my society pleased with what I do? That's stage 3, sometimes called good boy, nice girl orientation. Stage 4 in Kohlberg's theory of moral development is the most common stage for adults in the United States. So when you ask people in the United States, was it right for a politician to do something? Was it right for a corporate owner to do something? Was it right for your neighbor to do what he did? They say, uh, is it against the law? So this is the idea of accepting the laws that come from the government or accepting rules. For example, does it violate the Ten Commandments? Does it break a rule? So this is a person who has accepted the idea of laws and rules as being the overriding deciding factor in whether something is right or wrong. So a politician has uh, used a bunch of money to profit himself, and someone might say, well, that's just terrible that he did that. And a person in stage four might say, yes, but it's not against the law, so it's not really wrong. Maybe it's unsavory, maybe we don't like it, but it's not really wrong. He didn't do something ethically wrong because he did not violate a law. So this person assumes that the law is like God. The law is the primary thing that we focus on. As I said, this is the most common way that people think about right and wrong, that adults think about right and wrong in the United States. Stage five, we might call a social contract, uh, is a little bit higher level of thinking than the previous stages because this person, yes, understands the other four points of view, but says, wait a minute, um, we live in a society, and yes, we make laws, but we are making those laws not because they are the overriding rules that we must obey no matter what. We're making these rules for a purpose. We make laws because we have a contract with each other, a social contract, in which we agree, okay, I will not go through a red light. You will not go through a red light. This will protect us. So the purpose of the law is not to control our behavior. The purpose of the law has an overriding higher principle to protect us, because we live as a society. So this is like the Constitution of the United States. We want to protect the rights of individuals. People have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So if we ask this person, should the man steal the drug to save his wife? This person might say, well, it's wrong, of course, to steal. But in this case, there's a higher principle. Should drugs be so expensive that they cause the death of people? It seems that the death of people is a higher need, a higher importance than the breaking of a property law. So yes, we can understand that the man stole the drug, and we might even say that it's right. That yes, maybe he should have protested the law or done something else first. But we can understand that there's a higher principle beyond the law. Stage six is the last, the highest of the Kohlberg stages, sometimes called universal ethical principles. This is the idea that takes a long, long time for people to develop. It's what we might call wisdom. We see it in people like Gandhi, for example. It's moral judgment that is based on very astute, high-level principles of ethics that use reasoning and compassion so that we can use logic and we can reason about certain principles like equality for all people, like justice, that we can reason even above laws, even above social contracts, that we can decide that certain things are right. It's almost like the point of Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. The story that I remember is the poet Henry David Thoreau was put in prison because he refused to pay taxes that would go towards war or towards slavery. He said these were unethical, and so he was put in prison for refusing to pay his taxes. And his friend Ralph Waldo Emerson had come to see him in prison, and Emerson said to him, "Why are you in prison?" And Thoreau said, why are you not in prison? So this is like a stage 6 thinking where there's this higher ethical principle that says it's okay to break the law. It's okay to break social contracts because there's things that are even more important. There are these universal ethical principles like equality and justice and freedom and liberty and so on that stand above everything else. That is stage 6 in Kohlberg's theory. Good luck reaching that. That's a difficult stage to reach. People like Gandhi, who are way up there in their thinking. Research has shown that Kohlberg's theory is essentially correct. That we do find when we measure people of different ages that they do tend to follow these stages in the way they reason about right and wrong. Okay, that's Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral cognitive development. Oh, wow, wasn't it fascinating? I hope you enjoyed it. And for more of my videos, I've put the links here for you. Be sure to check them out. Bye.